The American Basketball Association is the largest pro league in the world. Some great opportunities for team ownership are available, and the cost may surprise you. If you've ever thought about team ownership in a pro league, give us the opportunity to help make it a reality. Reach out to us for more info. For USA teams at www.abaliveaction.com. In Australia, go to www.abaleagueaustralia.com. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between and beyond, back to Cut and Mix. I am Vanessa Hundley, here today with none less than the funniest man alive, Mr. Ian Bagg. Now, he is a very well-known comedian, very well established amongst the entertainment community. He has been featured on and featured on many shows. So we have him featured on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. You can also, might have seen him on The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson at one point, The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, if you want to roll back a little bit further into The Night Show, and has also been featured on several other major comedians' platforms. And I know Gabriel Iglesias is one of those, and a couple of other well-known names that, of course, we're going to tiptoe through the tulips and touch on those later. He is a native Canadian, and the best argument for no walls, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Bagg.
How are you? Nice to see you. Thanks for having me. I was like, I sound fantastic.
It's like the kind of sitting there writing it down, I want this on my gravestone, and I want this. So you are a really interactive live comedian. Yes. Your comedy talent was first recognized back when you were but a wee baron, and you were you loved hockey. Hockey was your passion. You were going to grow up and be the best hockey player ever, but on the buses of your hockey teams going to different gigs is where you started to find your funny, if you will. So how did that develop over time?
Yeah, it was just, I grew up in a little town in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and we'd have to travel to go play hockey games, and we'd sit in these things. When I was a young kid, they used to send us off in a thing called a crummy, it's just a pickup truck with a trailer put on the back of it, turned into a kind of a bus, and they'd use them to take the loggers into the bush, and they take a bunch of loggers out into the bush, and it was just a bunch of kids and a couple of dads on this truck, and we'd drive back and forth, and we just kind of make each other laugh because we didn't have video games. That's how old I am. Well, we had video games, but it was a baseball game, and it was a light, or beep 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 beep. Beep, beep, beep. It was not a video game at all. So we just make fun of each other, and I seem to become the best of it. So I just continued on there, and just as I grew up, I was like, I love this. And then I made Shannon Butler laugh when I was about 11 years old. I was like, oh my goodness, she's paying attention to me. This is fantastic. So I just continued on from there. Yeah, it was just great. Just stupidity.
So you went on for a little bit, and you tried to do the real thing, and you went to school, and I had it here in my little notes, but you originally went to school for not engineering, but something else that was like really serious like that.
I didn't even make it to school. I ended up working in a gold mine when I was about 18, 19. How it happened was my mom's from Australia, my dad's from Canada, and somehow my dad tricked this Australian girl into moving to the middle of nowhere in Canada. And when I graduated high school, my grandma happened to have passed away, so we ended up in Australia, and I stayed in Australia when my parents came home. So because I'd graduated high school, I didn't really know what I was going to do yet. And then I came home the next year, and I got a job working with an explosives company, and they sent me. I started at the bottom. My first gig was I carried dynamite from the magazine to the truck, and that's all I did. That was my job, right? And so I'd work 2 or 3 hours a day and pass out, smelling nitroglycerin and just walking these explosives back and forth. And then they said, "Do you want to learn how to drive truck?" So I said, "Yeah." So I learned how to drive truck, and I got help. I became the guy that drove along with the guy that drove that delivered the explosives, and then I became the guy that delivered the explosives. And then they're like, "Do you want to go to a mine?" And I was like, "Sure." So I ended up in a mine, helping plant explosives all over the place. And I just remember watching all this go on. I was like, I wonder how they figured that out. So I was going to go to school to become an engineer to figure out how much explosives they needed, how to set it up, to take apart things. And I was like, oh, I want to be able to do that in a city. I'd like to learn how to be able to, when a building's left out and they need it to taken down, I'd like to be able to do that. So I was headed off to UBC, I think was where I was going to go, UBC or BCIT. I can't remember which school I was going to go to, but I ended up in Vancouver, and I knew I wanted to try comedy, and I just went to an open mic night, and I never showed up at school. So I just did an open mic night, and I was like, this is it. I'm a comedian now. So I took some odd jobs and just, just learned how to do things. And I wish I'd gone to college, to be honest with you, just to have a little bit more knowledge, but just where I'm from, it didn't make sense. So I more or less went to the School of Hard Knocks, and then ended up in acting school in New York. That was my schooling, but yeah, I was supposed to either blow things up or blow things up. So I'm glad I took the second part, and just being a dummy and blowing things up, just being a comedian. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, that technically actually answered my next question too, which was about the open mic night, because you're like, I just stumbled into this open mic night. And so obviously you had a great time with that and said, wow, this just, the bug bit me. I'm here to do this. How do I make this happen?
Well, it wasn't so much that I stumbled into it. I knew I wanted to do it, and I was really, really nervous about it. And it took me a couple months to do it, and I
Oh,
ended up doing it. And it was a contest, and I was so green and so naive and so like a kid from a small town. And being from a small town in the 80s was different. Like I didn't start until like 95, I think is when I started doing comedy. But like growing up in the 80s and early 90s, when you grew up in a small town, you were isolated. You didn't have the internet to look at. Nothing made sense. You had to go places to do stuff,
you had to go
right?
to the library to read things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You had to go. You had to go use an encyclopedia. That was Google. You had to go. You had to cut your fingers to figure something out. So I had to go experience it, and I was just like, I don't know how any of this works. So my first open mic night was actually a contest at a place called Punchlines, and I went in and I did my show, and I didn't win. And I just like, oh, I guess that was it. Like I honestly at that point I just thought, oh, I tried my best and I didn't win, so I guess I'm never going to become a comic. And the manager of the club just happened to walk up to me and said, "You're really funny. I hope you come back next week when it's not the contest and it's just normal open mic night." And I was like, oh, I guess I get to come back. So if he hadn't have told me to come back, I wouldn't have ever done it again. But yeah, I just stumbled over myself into doing comedy. And as soon as I did it the second time, I was just like, this is it. I don't want to do anything else. I just loved it. So.
Well, you said you spent some time kind of working your way up to that. Did you already have an idea that you wanted to do kind of like an audience interactive, or did you originally start by trying to write and perform bits?
Well, I've always wrote stuff and performed stuff. The difference is I don't rely on that, and my written jokes I pretend my whole show's a like a road trip,
Hmm.
and there's certain jokes I have to go to. Like I call them cities, and there are certain jokes I have. But what roads I take to get there doesn't matter. But there's certain things I need to talk about. So when I first started out, I went on stage on the that contest, and I had written all the jokes on my hand, and I was so nervous. I had sweat them off my hand, so I had no jokes, and I was just like, "Oh my God, I can't remember anything." So I started doing impressions of fish with my hands and talking to the crowd, and that's kind of how it started. And it wasn't like that boom. I did a little bit of talking to the crowd, but I was very at the time I was influenced a lot by Stephen Wright, so I was very deadpan one line, and I would do one line and very deadpan, and it was completely different to what I do now. I used to hang out with a guy. He used to come up from Seattle. His name was Mitch Hedberg, and we were very much alike the way we do stand up. And he had long hair, and I had long hair, and we loved grunge rock, and we'd go hang out. So it was cool. Yeah, and then I went completely different way than he went, so which was cool. So.
Yeah, he is an excellent comedian. He's a very, very witty and kind of
It was
Had
just, yeah.
that sort of droll, you almost didn't
Yeah.
hear the punchline until it hit you,
Yeah, yeah, you didn't,
kind
you
of
didn't,
feel.
you didn't see it coming with him, and that's why I think I'm the same way. You can't really read what we're gonna go, which way we're gonna go, and I think that's what we liked about each other. That you didn't know what was gonna happen. The beginning of the joke made no sense about the end of the joke. So
Exactly. It's kind of like, how did we end up here?
I'm glad
And
we're here, but
yeah,
how did
I
it
was
happen?
like, that
Yeah,
that was a great destination, but the ride was weird though.
exactly.
So you had like when I've watched several of your shows, especially over the last couple of weeks, and they're going, let's know more. Because the funny part is the minute your name came up, I'm like, oh, I know who he is because I listen to 24/7 comedy on iHeartRadio. So they always go
Uh,
through different bits and from different comedians all over the world. And so I obviously had known your name, and then I went and I watched the video. I'm like, oh yeah, I do know, yeah, because sometimes in entertainment you're like, I think I know who that is.
yeah, yeah,
It's like I
yeah.
do know who that is, and
There's very few names that you're like you put instantly the face that goes with it. Yeah, but as soon as and it's funny that you say that because one night I brought on I can't remember who it was, but it was I think it was I think it was Gary Shandling. I brought him on stage and I just used his credits and I brought him on and I said his name and the people were clapping because they're like, and then they seen his face and then they're like, ah, I mean, it
ah,
was funny. Like they didn't. I'm like, well, I wonder who. Oh yeah, we know him. So it's interesting. So
yes, it's definitely one of those things where, especially when you're used to hearing people, like I listen to people a lot, but I'm
right.
not always watching things because a lot of times I'm in positions where I can't be glued to a screen unless, production. Yes, guaranteed screen time every day. However, watching the different ones, you are a very enthusiastic matchmaker in your
Oh,
crowds. There's several times you'll be kind of sitting there like, hey, you do real estate, let's sell something together, kind of thing. So when you walk in to do your set, obviously, well, first of all, do you ever take a peek at the audience in advance, or do you just kind of
no.
walk into? Okay, so you walk into it cold.
I really I hate seeing what the crowd looks like beforehand. I hate seeing what the comedian before me does. I want it to be a fresh sheet of ice and I have no idea what's going on. Yeah, I love that. I'm just like, oh, it's a surprise.
Yay!
Yeah, exactly. So and then it just creates more fresh stuff, I think, So yeah. But back to I do love I consider myself the ultimate wingman. I think I'm really good at hooking people up, just to let you know. I tell my friends that. And I've had relationships form from shows. I've had people come back and say, "Hey, remember that girl you had talked to me? I went out with her for 6 months, and she's crazy." So I'm like, "Well, you enjoyed yourself for 6 months. Shut up. Don't be a pansy."
I'm about to say, crazy can leave a mark, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so when you walk out on the stage, a lot of times I imagine it works a little bit better in the smaller clubs because I know the lights can get very bright, which means you kind of have to sort of focus maybe on the people you can see, but in the more intimate areas, you can see more of the room.
Hmm.
What draws what draws you to somebody to pull them into your show?
I have no idea how I just all of a sudden just something and I'll be talking to them. I'm like I have no idea how I pick them out, and it's weird the way I do it. Like I did Pittsburgh. When I went with Gabriel, we did all arenas, and I did Pittsburgh last year. We did the PPG Paints Arena, and which is was 12,000 people, and I separated everybody into different communities. That's how I played with them. Like the front row was the pretty rich people, like the luxury boxes were the ultimate rich people, and then the people at the back were poor people, and then the middle class on the sides. And I just go back and forth, and I don't know how. It's it's interesting. I kind of go into a trance and then I wake up at the end of the show. That's honestly how it works. I just like a lot of times I'm like, what happened?
Oh, no, I completely understand. I do the same thing when I'm DJing. It's like
Right?
sometimes at the end of it, they'll be like, so what'd you play? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I
Yeah.
can, let's go look at the set
My
list.
wife will my wife will ask, "Did you have fun?" Sometimes she goes, "Hey, did you get home? Did you have fun?" And I'm like, "I really don't know. I don't. I just know it felt good. It felt
Let's
good,
watch
but
the
yeah, yeah.
replay.
So.
So you did manage to find somebody to marry you, because I know with comedians,
Sure.
and you're still married, which
I'm
is,
still married.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. So how long you
I don't
been?
wear rings though, right? So I don't wear a ring, and I've had people yell at me before, even though I say on stage I'm married, and people, you're not wearing a ring. Why aren't you wearing a ring? My dad didn't wear a ring. I don't feel comfortable with it on my hand. It's not like any disrespect to her. And you know, it's the first thing I always on stage is that I'm married. I'm not like trying to trick people and pretend that I'm single, you know. So it's amazing being married. It's interesting finding a person that uh, will put up with you. Because and people are like, well, do you put up with her? And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, that bitch is crazy.
I might
Yeah,
just say.
being able to find somebody that you'll put up with. That's you know I'll let you go off into the weeds every so often, and she lets me go off into the weeds every so often. So it's good.
Oh, excellent. I'm so glad because, sometimes when well, I guess you're not on the road as much anymore, but when you do go on the road, that can be a very stressful situation for people.
Well, independent person. She's a very independent person. That was one of the things that attracted to me to her. Like, you know, she didn't need me. She like basically told me right away, I don't need you. I like being around you, but I don't need you. So
So, does she ever travel with you to shows?
my wife is a snooty little girl. She only comes to certain shows and they have to involve the ocean or her friend has to be there. So she'll come with me when I go to Australia and then convince
Hmm.
me to go to Fiji afterwards. And you know, she's one of those. Oh, you're going to San Francisco? I'll come there. Oh, you're going to New York? I'll go there. And I'm like, hey, you want to go to Iowa? And she's like, I'm not going to Iowa.
Bring me back some corn.
I'm like, yeah, so, yeah, basically, and I'm just like, well, to be honest with you, Iowa's where you should come because I really have nobody to talk to there, so that's where you
Oh.
should come. She's like, nope, enjoy Iowa, nope, enjoy Idaho. She just doesn't. Michigan, enjoy yourself. I don't like lakes.
Well, I know you said that a lot of times you kind of switch into like a sort of not automated, but another dimension, if you will, to the point where
Mhm.
like you come out and you're like, I did comedy.
Right.
Yay! Have you ever blanked, on stage? Like even early on, in the middle, do you
Oh
still every
yeah.
once in a while?
Oh yeah. That's part of, you know, I never blank as in like I'm giving up, but I was like, have no idea where I'm gonna go next. And then just something will, you know, just had pop in. You got after a couple seconds. Yeah, it just did. I remember when I first started out, I was going through a time where I was having panic attacks. I was having a lot of anxiety, and I would have panic attacks on stage every so often. It was just like terrifying. It was just like
Oh.
I can't get on stage and I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. So yeah, so it was but yeah, just I think stand-up's about being in the moment. So even if you do blank, you can just say I blanked, and, you know, or whatever. So
Welcome to live.
exactly, and it's when you're traveling, it's a constant. You're just basically jet lagged the whole time you're when you're traveling, especially when you're doing one night. You know, like I did. I was on Last Comic Standing and I don't know, I placed in the top five or something like that. And so I had to go on a tour after this TV show, and it was a 91-day tour, and we did 78 dates, and it started in Spokane, Washington, and ended in Hawaii. So you'd basically do the show, get on the bus, go to the next place, show up at a hotel in the morning, sleep for a couple hours, go to the venue, get back on the bus, go someplace else. So and you're just like, oh, just kind of dopey, you know. So it's a very interesting. Yeah. So yeah, forget. Yeah, but does it matter? No.
No. Well,
No.
now that you've mentioned the the upper echelons, past the open mics, now you've been doing it for a few years. How did your trajectory work from, you were doing the open mics, you went to New York and you did the acting school thing. Where did you find comedy becoming an actual profession for you, where it was something you could do as a job and not just a side gig?
Uh, I honestly, right away could make some money off it. So within like 6 months, I was having these random gigs, and I wasn't making much money, and I was able to figure out how to live off of not much money.
Mm.
And today, when I talk to like a younger comic and say, "Hey, I'm doing it very well. What's your advice?" I'm like, "Get a job, become the king of your city." Like I wish I had made life easier on me, but making life easier on me doesn't mean I would have got the opportunities that I received. Like I went out to the Montreal Comedy Festival with a friend for no money at all, hitchhiked all the way home, like that kind of stuff. But there I met the guy that had the club that I ended up in New York with. I had a gig in Montreal and decided I was moving to New York and got on a train with $700 and went to New York, and I had never been to New York before. I ended up living in a youth hostel, and that's where my career really became what my career is. So is there a right way to do anything? I don't know. I don't know if there's a right way to do anything, but I don't think you need to be broke to be a comedian,
Mm.
even though I went through it. But it's just, it's a lot of times it's being in the right place at the right time. Like living in Los Angeles is a very interesting thing because we talk about being in the right place at the right time, but I want to tour, right? I want to tour. I want a comedy career that tours, but I also want to do other stuff. So I need to be home. And sometimes you see the guys that aren't the best comics and aren't they don't have the power to tour, but they're home and they end up getting stuff that you
Right.
don't like. So it's a catch 22. But that's why I say to, become the king of your town, get a job, become the king of your town, because then your next opportunity will happen somehow. And I know guys, I have a friend, Chad Daniels, who's never moved out of Minnesota, and he's hugely popular, and he made money and stayed in his hometown. He didn't go to Los Angeles or New York, he'd tour and go out, but he lived a very comfortable life. So there's no A plus B equals C when it comes to comedy, and I'm pretty sure entertainment. Like
Yeah.
it's A plus B times D minus Z, you're back to A. That's entertainment. You just have no idea. And then there's some guys that are just like, oh, I just walked in the door and I'm already in a huge careers. But you can't be. It's tough. It's tough for everybody that's in show business not to look at anybody else's gardens and say, I want that garden and be jealous of it. It
Mhm.
took me a while to figure that out and just, enjoy other people's gardens. Go, yeah, I do want that garden. I wonder what seeds they're using. And then, so it's fun. It's fun, frustrating. It's a roller coaster that just doesn't seem to stop. You're like, oh, look at that, we're finally getting, oh no.
Mm.
And then a thing called a pandemic shows up and just totally knocks everybody down. So now we're all starting again, and it's
Yeah.
it's weird. It's not just me, it's absolutely everybody. It's so
Everybody.
bizarre. So
And I can empathize with that because
yeah.
post recession, like I'm going to say, like I can kind of divide my career in two halves: before the recession and now before the pandemic.
Right. And
And with both of those, they were multi-tiered little things. And after the recession, I'm like, oh gosh, wow, I put my eggs a little bit too much in this one basket. We're going to diversify and we're going to spread it all out. So we have multiple layers of business. So if this one slows down, this one's still good. This one slows down, this is good. So like for comedians, it's like, if the nightclubs aren't booking as much, maybe you're getting more corporate stuff. If they're not
right.
booking as much, maybe you're getting more guest appearances on shows. But then, like you said, everything shut down at once. It was literally like somebody
Everything
walked by
shut
going,
down. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Since that happened, I started doing I started my own internet show.
Mhm.
It's called Around the Bag, where I just host three friends virtually, and they answer questions in three different rounds, and I give them points from minus 50 all the way up to a billion, and they try to win to become my best friend for the week. So I do that on YouTube and Facebook and Twitch. I do it all live there, and yeah, people drop by and have fun, and just we were doing it 5 days a week for a while. We did 52 of them from March until I took 2 weeks off 2 weeks ago. I just started again, so it was like a lot, but yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it kind of keeps those muscles going, kind of. So you're just kind of like, I'm doing stuff, and the people that I've asked do it are happy to do it because they don't have stuff going on. So it's nice for them to be able to escape and not just be overthinking everything.
We're doing a lot in the music industry as well, because I know a lot of live musicians. Because I always tell other DJs, I'm like, without musicians, we wouldn't have a career. So
Right.
you really, really got to support the music world.
Yeah.
And I've watched across multiple industries as things we previously wouldn't have thought of, because they, especially when you're in entertainment, they're always like, that in-person connection, that in-person connection. Well, it's not an option anymore. Some of us have really had to learn how to evolve from being that in-person person
Hmm.
to translating ourselves to the online sphere. And like you said, doing what you were doing, especially at the volume that you were doing it at, allows you to, keep the wheels from getting squeaky, per
Yeah. Yeah.
se. And
I'm learning how to do all my social media that I've ignored now too. Like I focused in on Instagram and Facebook and
mhm.
Twitter and YouTuber week, so I'm trying to build them up. So
So
it's
anybody that's
great.
out there watching, find your favorite entertainer and follow them, because I
Yeah,
guarantee you, if we were popular at all, we're like, man, I've got so much word of mouth business. Who needs
yeah,
this social media thing? I'll post events on it maybe. But
yeah.
now we're all
That's
sitting there going, okay, who
now.
needs this social media thing?
Yeah, and if honestly, if you're listening to this and there's a entertainer that you've ever been hoping to talk to, now is the time that there's a good chance somebody's going to respond.
Oh,
Just
that's
to
a
let
great thought.
it's and now is the time. There's very few people that are busy, especially if you're in entertainment. You're just
Yeah.
like, so there's a good chance if you say something nice to somebody or, some sort, just or ask them a question that you're seriously curious about, there's a good chance they'll respond. I can't guarantee it, but there's a good chance they will respond. And don't be one of those people that sends hate mail. I love it when I get hate mail. It makes me laugh so much. I'm just like, oh yeah, all right. I've never had that. When I'm on the internet and you're scrolling, I've never had the mindset to stop if I don't like something and comment. And I'm just like, oh yeah. I don't go onto other people's stuff and say stuff. I just, I say stuff on my stuff, but
Yeah.
why would you just like just breaking into somebody's house and yelling at them? Why would you use blue paint?
Yeah, and I heard you say that before, like when the audience is kind of sitting there like doing the tap 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 thing, and you're just kind of like, "Excuse me, guys, I didn't break into your party," and
Exactly.
it's like you came to
Loosen
see
up.
me.
Oh, it's gonna be so different now. I did a show last week. I did a show. People, it was a drive-in. So
Nice.
people were in their cars, and I just like, oh, this is awesome. I'm like, hey man, I didn't break into your garage and start doing this. Let's get into this.
You came to my garage
Yeah.
now. So let's talk about those television appearances. What show did you go on as a guest first with the late night shows?
My first show was Conan O'Brien. That was my first TV show ever. I was managed by a guy named Lucian Hold, and he said, "Hey, there's an audition tonight for Conan O'Brien. You're not on it." And I was like, "Oh, thanks for telling me." And he's like,
Mm.
"What I'm going to do is have you go on before it happens. That way, if they're late, you're a buffer, and if they're on time, they actually see you." And I was like, "Oh, you're smarter than I thought you were." So I just went and did my thing, and he said they were, and then he came up to me afterwards, and he said they're on time. They were on time, and they'd like to talk to you. So I went over, and that's how I booked it. And that's honestly how I got all my work papers for living down here, because they're like, "We'd like you to be on the show." I was like, "I'm not legal," and they're like,
Make me legal.
"Yeah." They said, "We'll get you legal." So
Make an
they,
honest comedian out of
yeah.
me,
Make me honest, please. Put a ring on my finger. Make me honest. So that's how that happened. That was just just so much fun. And it's funny. I'm pretty sure I seen one of the sets from I have because I've been in Conan for years, but I seen one of the two. They have them online on like Conan O'Brien now, and it was like I'm it's like 25 years old. I got long hair. I got my best outfit on, which is a logger shirt, shorts, and a pair of boots. So I look like I'm straight out of the bush. It's pretty funny. It's if you see it, you go. And I remember there's a manager named Barry Katz. He came up to me after the show. He seen me. He goes, "I really like that character you played on Conan O'Brien." I was like, "Character? That's my best stuff." That's me. That's me. Wow.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you started with the late night shows, and then I know you said you've toured with a few people. What were some of your favorite tours that you've done?
Oh, my favorite tours. That Last Comic Standing tour was great because it was just so overwhelming, and it felt like there's nothing closer to being like in a band when you do that. So like comics are known for doing a couple nights here and then flying home. That's what we're nobody tours for 3 months away from their family. Like we toured 3 months constantly away from everybody. So uh that was really cool and really learning, and just it was a different life totally for 3 months, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Europe with Gabriel. There's
Mhm.
nothing better than, that was another month that we spent together out on the road, but that's because we were in Europe, and it's completely different when you get to do private jet. Yeah, private jet is way better than first class, I'm going to tell you that. So
Yeah, you're not knocking anybody's head off your shoulder,
no,
trying to get the air from like drying your eyeballs
Eh,
out.
I love estimated time of departure. That's my favorite. Well, when we get to the airport, we're gonna leave probably about half an hour after we get to the airport. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
What the
you're right. Because the only way that changes on a commercial flight is if something goes wrong.
Yeah,
And yeah.
so there. It's like awesome. Oh, we're gonna leave a little bit later because we didn't want those sandwiches. We're gonna eat it. So, yeah,
But
it was fun.
sandwiches are important with Gabriel.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun tour. And then I did Australia by myself, and I had a great time. I did China with Gaffigan back in the day. That was a great tour. Me and Jim Gaffigan over in China.
What are the crowds like in different countries? Like, do you find a lot of the same enthusiasm for your style there, or do you?
Yeah, Europe was so much fun. They just loved it, and China was interesting because, and let's be honest, everywhere has American pop culture, so you can
Yeah.
always rely on pop culture. So they don't care about the other stuff, not like that's going on in America. They're like, whatever, we got our own junk going on. Don't come waste.
Mm.
But my favorite was South Africa. When I went to South Africa, I was there for a month twice, and it it was just this generation of thirst, for knowledge and fun and being able to do things, and it was very eye-opening, and it was a great time. And I remember when I first got the offer, I'm like, I don't know if I want to go to South Africa, because you always have heard bad things about South Africa. When I got there, the people are just awesome, and just I didn't ever not feel safe, even though I probably shouldn't have felt safe a couple times. I remember once I was with Bobby Lee, and Bobby went to the store, and then I met up with him. I was going to meet up with him later, and I just happened to walk into the store, and Bobby was there, and he's go, Ian, I just got mugged. They stole my phone. I just got mugged, and I just like, oh, this is so interesting. So I said, were they black guys? And he goes,
Oh.
Ian, we're in Africa. Of course they're black guys.
Ah.
My favorite. I was like, it was the only time that you could say that. It was just like it actually was supposed to be like. So it was just but we worked with Trevor Noah while we are there, and we had a great time. And I find people, there's going to be a percentage that don't get it, and there's always going to be a percentage of people that are too cool for school. But
Yeah.
most people, when they come to a comedy show, they're there to have fun, and they
Mhm.
will go on your journey. So it's good, and there are some places it's a bigger percentage, and some places it's a lower percentage, but
Mhm.
it's never the same. I'm not cutting the same piece of wood every day. It's
Yeah.
definitely, so much fun. So yeah, I've gotten to see most of the world. There's some places that I'd still love to go to. I was hoping to go to India, but who knows if that'll ever happen. And I was doing a military tour, but I never got to Afghanistan. We took off on the plane 3 times, and bad things happened to the plane 3 times. So we landed back down and back home. And then they said, you're not going to Afghanistan. We were there. It took us 3 weeks to find, no, 2 weeks to find out we weren't going to Afghanistan. 3 flights, 2 weeks. And so I ended up doing a show in the hospitals in Germany there at the military bases. So that's what we did. So we did something, but I was hoping to go to someplace like that. So
Yeah, it definitely would have been an extreme experience. And I know, it'd probably be a little while before it could be something where you could get there again, I guess.
Mhm.
Um, so you've traveled the world, you've done comedy, but you've also appeared in a few movies over the years
Ah,
too. You have a little bit of film in there. You got, and they're very eclectic selections too. So there's just a couple I want to touch on. You did do one with the Olsen twins.
that was my first thing I ever did. Boil and boil, toil and trouble. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what it was. It was a very interesting. I don't know what that was. So they were
The
just.
funny part is I remember that movie because my daughter was about the age to be like, oh, this is a fun movie. And I was like, yay.
I
And I was
just did.
like,
I just did it. Like I was. I think I just yelled something in a room or something like that. So that was that. So I don't even know if it was. I think they may have cut out my voice. To be honest, I was such a bad actor at the time. Yeah, that's funny. It's funny that you found that.
oh
So
yes. I told you I go digging. Been an MXP, which is the most
most
extreme primate.
extreme primate. Yes, yes.
Yes.
I got to go snowboarding with a chimpanzee.
How is that? I mean,
It was
first of all,
awesome.
was the chimp actually a good snowboarder, or did
He's
they
not
just
too
make?
bad. No, he's not too bad. He was a pretty good snowboarder. You know, he was pretty surprised. We also did. I also did MVP 2 with him, which is a completely different movie, but the same chimpanzee, which was most valuable primate. No, was it most vertical primate?
Most vertical.
Vertical. Yeah. So the MVP 1 was most valuable primate. MVP 2 was most vertical primate, where he played hockey and skateboarded. And I got to play hockey with him for 2 months in Vancouver. That was a lot of fun.
I'm about to say playing hockey with a
That was
chimpanzee.
awesome. It was the director was out of his mind. He would just like he would have these talks with us guys. I need this real. You got to keep it real. And then he'd push his chimpanzee and skates out. And you're just like, keep what real? Like
It's
this
like
is yeah, this is
serious face.
I used to get in trouble every so often because I'd be busy playing hockey with the monkey and not even paying attention to the script. And you're like, get away from that monkey! Quit having so much fun. We got to make some money here. You're wasting time. So
Oh, that's so much fun. And so, I mean, the movies, I guess, are just something that you kind of just got, pulled into over time, or you just, or is it
I
something you
always
aggressively
I
pursued? Because you did go to acting school.
I did go to act and I enjoy acting. It's just not a passion. It's
Right.
I feel like it's a necessity of what I do.
Right.
So yeah, so it just kind of it's just one of those things. So yeah, I do it. Yeah, it's fun, and I've done some stuff. I've been cut out of Coyote Ugly.
Oh, see, there's a claimish to fame, sort of.
Yeah,
What did you do in Coyote Ugly?
I was supposed to be a stripper.
Oh, wow.
I was the worst. I was there as the worst stripper in town.
Oh,
Oh,
we'll have to see where you find the be real of that for sure.
yeah.
So let's talk about what you're doing now. We know you've got the web show, which is called Around the Bag.
Yes.
And that where do people listen? Where can people listen
They
to
can
that
find it
again?
on. They can find it live on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. on Facebook Ian Bagg Comedy, or they can do it on YouTube Ian Bagg Comedy Channel, or they
Mhm.
can do it on Twitch Ian Bagg. Those are the three that they're on. And then you can find it on Instagram. A couple days later, we put it up, cut it up into pieces on Ian Bagg, and just have fun with it. So, and then it's not on audio right now, but we hope to put it up as a podcast as well. And yeah, just fun, just like I say, just have fun. And then I also have the new album coming out, which came out this week on Pandora. Next
Mhm.
week it comes out on Spotify, and then September 1st it comes out on iTunes, and it is called Everybody Wants Some with Ian Bagg. No, it's not no, with Ian Bagg. It's Everybody Wants Some Ian Bagg. That's what it is, and it's just it's a show that I did at Hermosa Beach Comedy and Magic Club in November,
Mhm.
and it was my birthday that night. And it's just an hour of me having fun with the crowd and trying to give them cupcakes.
Yes. Oh, yes. Cupcakes were a big thing. It's
Yeah.
and it's really I'm always a little bemused to go back and listen to stuff that I recorded, before the world ended. Because it's,
Thanks.
when you sit there and you listen to yourself and you're like, wow, if I'd only known what was coming in just a few months.
Right.
Um, but how do you see I mean, obviously we're all still kind of muddling our way through this, and there's not going to be as much in-person stuff as we would like, but what do you see developing for you this year? Do you have anything on the books? Do you have people reaching out to you, doing any virtual events
I'm
besides the
doing some virtual. I'm doing some virtual stand up here and there. I do them. I'll put out a thing every so often. I'll just go, hey everybody, tonight. I'm gonna go to a Zoom show. Contact me for a link because you have to have everybody has to contact you for a link, or it can go off the rails pretty bad. And then I'm doing some live stuff. Like I did something at the beach a couple of weeks ago where people were spread out. I did this. Drive-in. I'm doing a couple more drive-ins in September. I think where it's going to go, I think it's going to be outdoors. I think my shows are all going to be outdoors. Everybody will be socially distanced, so it's going to be less people than normal. But I'm fine with that. I'll do more shows, for less people. I think that's the way you got to look at it. Am I comfortable with doing anything indoors right now? It'd have to be a pretty big place for me to be comfortable with it with not many people. I don't feel, it's great however you feel. I would rather be err on the caution of being too safe than not safe enough. That's what that, I don't want to get anybody sick. Call me a pansy. I don't care. I feel like I got a lot of years left too, so I don't want to get sick as well. So, I don't want anybody to get sick, and I don't want to get sick. And I realize it's not just me. I realize it's everybody. So therefore, I'm not, and I don't know how people get frustrated, but I'm just, going to keep a calm breathe, have my little snap attack once a day, and then go back to normal. But I see live stuff coming soon. It's not going to be anywhere near as much of it, and it's not going to be anywhere near what it was. It's, and you got to do it. I was always told those most resistant to change are those that disappear first, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's like they always say, if you don't bend, you break. So,
yeah. So I'll try anything and see how it goes. And if I don't feel safe, I won't do it. But if you know, am I? I'm fine with being out of my comfort zone and trying
yeah.
something. So yeah.
For the shows you have had, how is there any new variances that you've introduced, because obviously like maybe people aren't close enough to be like matchmaking kind of thing, so are there any new bits like with cars or something
Yeah,
else that you're
it's
kind of
funny.
like yeah.
I was telling people, I was picking which cars I thought had warranties left on them. It's the big thing is, at the show that was on the beach, a couple people wanted to come up and talk to me afterwards, and I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't want to. We're not going to talk. There's going to be no meet and greet after the shows. That's the big thing. We're just, so. Yeah, it slows. I'll tell you that it slows merch sales down.
Yeah, because I know a lot of times at the end of the show, you're kind of doing the hey, and if you
Yeah.
buy this, you can actually meet me, or
Yeah,
something like
and then
this.
also I've always pound the flesh, just shaking hands, kissing babies, it
Yes.
just means something to people, but right now you can't, sadly. So I don't think I'll ever shake a hand again. I know that's
Yeah. Oh, you're in California, which makes the outdoor event idea a little
right.
bit easier right now than it might be in some places.
Absolutely.
What is your take? What have you seen about how people are acting on the ground where in your area? Do you feel like a lot more people are paying attention to what's going on, or do you feel like a lot of people are just being like, whatever, who cares? It's been 6 months. I needed Cheetos,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I read something the other day that said just because you're bored doesn't mean it's over. And we've all
That's
had
putting it.
that's we all got to remember that. So,
Mhm.
but they've been fairly good. I think people are doing pretty good. Of course, I think the same people that don't want things are the same people that didn't want seatbelts, that didn't want smoking to end indoors. You know what I mean? Like they're the same people.
Yes.
They're the same. They're the exact same people. They don't. They're just they're the exact same people. That's all I'm gonna say.
I'm laughing because it's like, I think we're probably one of the last generations that remembers like, the aggressive smoking indoors, like walking into a restaurant and being like, do you want smoking or not? Which really didn't kind of matter because the smoke made its way over anyway. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny because I live on the beach and sometimes I'll smell smoke in the house and I'll just walk out. I walk out to see where it is, and they're way down the street. You know what I mean? I was like, it travels. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I grew up in a house full of smokers, and I was a smoker for a long time too, because,
Who cares?
stuff happens. I know. I know. I have finally broken it, which is, I will say, out of all the habits you can have, it's definitely one of the hardest ones to break.
Absolutely. It's how they
Well,
catch
and when you're on the road, it's really easy to pick up bad habits too.
you.
What are some of the things that you've done to help keep
Heroin.
yourself?
No.
It just blocks everything out.
Yeah. I have to watch my battery. I've only got that much left, so I got to
No,
watch my
that's
battery.
okay. We're about done anyway. So
Okay.
yeah.
What was the last question though? What did you say? What are the? And then I interrupted with heroin.
Oh, I was going to say, what would be your advice to comedians for, staying healthy on the road or staying healthy?
When we can travel, the biggest thing that I do is I try to go to a gym that isn't in the hotel because it gets you out of the hotel.
Yes.
And it makes you, and my comedy, this might be different for other guys. My comedy is best the more my brain has stuff coming at it. So getting out of the hotel helps me, whereas being in the hotel depresses me. So yeah. I like my alone time in the hotel as well, but it's let's be honest, it shows 1 hour a day, so you got 23 hours to kill. So,
that's a lot of walls to stare at.
Yeah,
you
have to be careful. You have to be careful, or else you could just So.
Well, we're going to bow to the gods of technology and make sure that we don't lose you before we're done. So before we wrap up, how are all the ways people can find you?
Go to ianbagg.com. That would be, you can go to ianbagg.com, but also I'm on Ian Bagg on Instagram. That's my favorite because it's pictures. And then a second, Baggs_Ian on Twitter. And it's a new account. So there's not many people on there, so come find me there. Ian Bagg Comedy Channel on YouTube, Ian Bagg Comedy on Facebook, Ian Bagg on Pandora, Ian Bagg on Spotify, and I think that's it. I don't know. There's probably a couple other that I'm forgetting, but if you go to ianbagg.com, hopefully you can find me all there. Yeah, so I appreciate it. I appreciate this. I appreciate you.
Oh, no, likewise. I was about to say, because I'm definitely going to come listen to some of your weekly shows for Around the Bag. Which you said is Wednesday at 7. That's Pacific time, right?
7 p.m. Pacific time, and hopefully we can get you on as a guest at some point.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to. Absolutely. We also want to make sure we remind everybody about your new album, which is Everybody Wants Some, and that is on the 800-pound gorilla label. And people can download that on
iTunes September 1st. So if you want it, do me a favor, pre-order it for September 1st so I can get some little bit of so it goes up. So I appreciate that.
Yes, most definitely. So we're going to have all of this popping up on the screen too for anybody. But we want to make sure we always say it. So when this is the listen only version, people understand, exactly what they're listening to.
Yeah.
I am going to say thank you so much, Ian, for coming on and talking with me today and sharing your little interview of the comedy world.
I had so much fun. So thanks for having me, and stay safe.
There's a whole world out there. A world searching for you. Your book, your online course, your innovative project or products, your movies, music, podcast, web media, your expertise and life experience. You. No Strings Attached e-News is here to help the world find you with our unique media networks and advertising options for creatives, professionals, and businesses of all sizes. Find out more at nsaen.com.